man, that looks not good. Oh. Okay. And it is 5 o'clock Central Standard Time. Welcome, everybody, to Just G Live. Coming to you live this evening from South Haven, Mississippi, as per the usual. And I'm happy. I'm very happy to be back. Very, very happy to be here talking to you guys and hopefully getting some conversation back this evening. Some semblance of live sports are back. And I understand, yes, everybody, I've seen this all online. Last week, yes, was the WNBA draft. Sadly, I would talk about that a little bit more. I would have talked about it more, but I'm not going to sit here and claim to know a whole lot about women's basketball. I know that there's someone incredible got drafted first overall to the New York Liberty, I want to say, from I think it was Ionescu from Oregon. I think all I know is that she's really good and went early on, but it's the NFL draft. The NFL draft is going on. It's tonight is the second and third round. It starts in about an hour. I'm going to try and maybe keep this as short as I can for you guys so that you guys can go and watch, and maybe just a little bit for me to go and watch myself. But it was a very, very interesting evening last night. Last night was the first round of the draft, the one that everybody had been waiting for so long. And I talked a bit about the order and, going through one of the mock drafts on Wednesday. Sadly, I wanted to go through one that was a little bit more recent, a little bit more current, but Kuiper didn't put that out until I think the morning of yesterday morning. I think at like 7. I would have done like a special stream for it or something, but I feel like that would have just been a little bit too much. Would have broken up the whole cycle and the schedule of things, and it would have been just, too much projecting, that kind of thing. But with all that said, I hope you are all doing well. I hope everybody else is enjoying the draft process just as much as I am. I am living my best life with all this going on. I'm just happy to have something going on with sports and something that I follow and would like to think that I know a lot about. With that said, let's just get right into it. Let's get right into the draft. And just like I did on Wednesday, going through that mock draft, what I'm going to do is I'm going to break this thing down pick by pick, going to talk about each specific draft pick, and we're going to take them in order from 1 down to 32. And there were a couple trades last night. We're going to talk about those and kind of the impact that they had, if they even really had much of an impact. Some of them did, some of them really didn't do all that much. So, of course, as expected, number 1 overall to the Cincinnati Bengals, the hometown kid from Athens, Ohio, Joe Burrow, Heisman winner, national champion. Every trophy for a quarterback you can realistically think of went to him last season at Louisiana State University. There's, again, no surprise here. And if you didn't watch much of college football last year, the only thing I can say to the only thing I can really say about him is that he does so many things at a high level that it really masks some of the things that he might not be as good at. He's got a great mind for the game. He's got great eyes, very good vision downfield. He's just really solid all around. He throws a nice ball. He's got a good deep ball, good mid-range, and even good short accuracy. Not a lot of quarterbacks can say that they are accurate with all of their throws, kind of at every level of the field. And that's the thing. Burrow's just kind of got it all. He's even a little bit more athletic than a lot of people give him credit for. A lot of people look at him and say, oh, he's just a pocket passer. Yeah, he might primarily be a pocket passer, but he can manipulate the pocket really well and take off on runs if and when he needs to. Coming in at 6'4", 221, he's also, he's just a physical presence back there. He, adds a lot of confidence from behind the line of scrimmage and, gives that off to his receivers and to other people on the field. It will be interesting to see how he plays with Cincinnati, because that's the thing. Over the last couple of years, Cincinnati has struggled. They haven't gotten a lot of wins, and they've all been doing that with the same quarterback, with Andy Dalton. So it'll be interesting to see. You would assume that they give day one, game one, they give the ball to Joe and just say, look, go out there, do your best, do what you do, play quarterback, play football. You have to expect that's what they do, especially when you take the quarterback number 1 overall. But the thing is, the team still hasn't done anything to distance themselves from Andy Dalton. They haven't, cut him or traded him. And it'll really be interesting to see what happens with him. I mean, they very well could keep him on because a quarterback on a rookie deal is nothing like a quarterback on their second, third, fourth deal, if they even get to that point. But having someone like Dalton to be in that quarterback room, someone who has been in the game for a long time and with this organization, that same amount of time, it could be beneficial for the team to keep hold of somebody like Dalton. And really, that's all I have to say about Joe Burrow. That's the thing. The first couple picks in the draft, I'm not going to sit here and just talk and talk and talk about because they're pretty much exactly as expected, if not, exactly as anticipated and, really, kind of a sure thing before the draft even happened. Same thing kind of with the number 2 pick. With the number 2 pick, the Washington Redskins selected Chase Young, defensive end out of Ohio State. And a lot of people were calling Young the best player overall in the draft, and I have to agree. From the edge position, he does it all. He can, get in behind, sack the quarterback, stop the run, play well against the pass. I think he's the most complete and most polished player in the draft this year. And, Washington just got lucky enough to, have him fall to them at 2, even though that really isn't much of a fall for a player of his caliber. He should slot right in across the defensive line from Montez Sweat in Washington. And really, this defense should just end up being a whole heck of a lot better with Chase Young on one side, Sweat on the other side, and now with 2 defensive-minded coaches with it slipped my mind now. What's his name? Not Rich Rodriguez. Man, it slipped my mind. But I remember their defensive coordinator now. It's Jack Del Rio is their new defensive coordinator in Washington. I'm sure their head coach will come back to me at some point. I'm sorry for a mess. Maybe is it down here? Nah, it's not. Oh, well, not really that big a deal because this is less about the team itself and more about the player that they're getting, Chase Young. He is a huge impact player. When I say huge, I mean impact wise and physical wise. He is 6'5", 260 pounds, and he's so fast. He's just an incredible athletic talent, and I expect him to be a dominant defensive player in the NFL for years to come. And then another very expected pick at the 3 overall pick, the Detroit Lions selected Jeff Okudah out of Ohio State as well. He's the number 1 corner. He's big, physical, fast. He's got long arms. He's really just a pure lockdown corner. And I mean, thing is, for the Lions, this is a player that they needed. They, end up losing out on their number 1 corner this offseason. He requests a trade. He gets shipped off to Philadelphia. And at this point, looking at their depth chart, I think Okudah steps in day 1, is their number 1 corner, and I think he excels. He has everything that he needs to succeed at the NFL level. He's got the size. He's got the speed. Shoot, he even played wide receiver in high school and even played a little bit of that position in college. He's got good ball skills. The only thing that I think he could work on is his tackling ability. Yes, he's good at tackling, but he's not exceptional at that. If he works on that just a little bit, and if he works on his block shedding as well, he realistically could become one of the best, if not the best, cornerback in the draft or in the NFL. And I mean, I could very well see something like that happening in the near future. Let's see. Here we go. The number 4 pick. This one. With the number 4 overall pick, the New York Giants selected Andrew Thomas, offensive tackle from Georgia. Now, when I saw this pick last night, and I saw it live, I told myself, I'm not going to go in too hard. I'm not going to kill the Giants for this pick. I'm not, because, look, they have a young quarterback. This is a team that's really kind of focusing on their offense right now, And they've got a young quarterback. They've got a lot of young skill position players, and they have an offensive line that's a mix of veteran guys and guys that are relatively new to the league. And even though I really do believe that the Giants would have been best off going with a defensive player here, and he's a defensive player that I'll get to talking a little bit about later on. I don't think Andrew Thomas is a bad pick at all. I think it's a good pick. It's a pick that, this is a guy that obviously he fits the archetype that Gettleman likes. He fits the type of player that, new head coach Joe Judge likes. He's an offensive tackle. He's 6'5", 315. He's a really big guy. He's quick. He's agile. He's a smart offensive lineman as well. And if I'm looking at all of the offensive linemen in the draft, I think what he's the best at being polished right now. I think he's the best at being able to just step into a team, command part of the locker room, and be a cornerstone piece on an offensive line. With that in mind, I don't think he has the highest ceiling of any of the tackles. I think he's probably my second, third, actually no, probably third or fourth ranked offensive tackle that I had going early in this draft. And then all of a sudden he goes first. So that's the thing. I think he's a low ceiling, but very high floor guy. He'll certainly be a starting tackle in the NFL. But, and I'll talk a little bit more about the other offensive linemen because all the other, 4 or 5 offensive linemen that I have in my top 5 went in the first round this year. And that's no surprise to me. It was surprising, though, to see Andrew Thomas go as early as he did. Do I think Gettleman made a mistake? Yeah, I kind of do. And could it be for whatever reason? Sure. Could it be, the age-old Giants excuse? He's got a better character than some of the other guys that we saw up there. And that very well could be the reason why he went higher than some of these guys that have better upside. With all that in mind, all in all, I think it's a fine pick. It's all right. I would have rather have seen them go for somebody like Isaiah Simmons, excuse me. But that's just because if I look at this team, I look at it and I say this offense is not in a bad spot. This offensive line is not in a bad spot. You've got a starting left tackle. You've got a couple starting guards, even a starting center already that have been with the team and have had time to gel together as an offensive unit. And adding somebody like this, he'll be polished. He'll be good day one and year one, but I don't necessarily know if he'll be as good as some of the other linemen that went in the draft. Now, moving on to number 5 overall. And if you guys couldn't tell, if you guys did watch the draft last night, I'm moving a little bit quicker than the draft did last night. It was a little bit sluggish at times. I've heard that there was a little bit of confusion maybe with some of these coaches and general managers and the new technology system that they had to be using. But here's one that was both surprising and not surprising. And it might just be surprising because, a team might have thrown up a smokescreen or something to distract other teams. Going 5 to the Miami Dolphins, quarterback from Alabama, Tua Tagovailoa. He's a good quarterback, man. Like I watch his tape. I've seen him play. I've seen him decimate, my favorite college team and most of the rest of the SEC West, the last couple seasons. But that's the thing. There are a couple things that are knocks on him. Some people don't like left-handed quarterbacks. I don't have a problem with that. I think he's shown that it's no hindrance to him. Not a big deal at all. He's extremely accurate. He's got a great arm on him. He can see the field and read a defense very, very well. He is athletic, but the problem with him is and they showed this on the draft, broadcast last night, the long list of injuries that he's taken over just the last, 3 seasons. He ended last year against Mississippi State with a dislocated hip, and I believe it was part of the bone that holds your leg kind of together at the hip was fractured. It's the same kind of injury that has ended careers in the past. And I mean, it is very good to see someone like Tagovailoa, who, as far as I've heard, is he's a great guy off the field as well. He's a character guy. He's a leader in the locker room, and everybody that's interacted with him absolutely loves him. But the problem with that is I'm kind of surprised he went as early as he did, only because in the last week or two that teams have been starting to show they were maybe a little bit scared of picking him just because of that injury. I don't want to say injury bug, but that injury history that he's had. With the ankle injury, recurring ankle injuries, they don't just go away like that. They don't just heal when you're healed. Things like that can compound, things like that just get worse over time and can deteriorate. And I can understand why teams would be a little bit skeptical or a little bit shy of picking someone like Tagovailoa, but his overall just ability and skill landed him in Miami with the number 5 overall pick. And I do think that was probably the best quarterback in this draft apart from Joe Burrow, just based on absolute ability and skill. And speaking of another quarterback that I had very high, but maybe, or not even maybe, but certainly not as high as Tagovailoa, is Justin Herbert from Oregon. This guy is a beast of a man. He's got a great arm, pretty good vision of the field. I would say the one knock on him that I have is sometimes his decision making and his ability to make the rest of the team around him better. Those are two things that I can look at him and look at some of the film and say, these are things he might not have been able to necessarily do at the collegiate level that he's going to have to either learn how to do or just all of a sudden be able to do at the NFL level. He's got a big arm. He's a big guy. He's 6'6" and 240 pounds. He is a big quarterback. And thing is, it's not just his arm that is something that's so impressive. For a guy of his size, he is exceptionally quick, very athletic. He's got a great release on him, especially for a guy with his arms as long as he is. Inside the pocket, he really just stands there. He's very tough in the pocket. It's difficult to take him down. The interesting thing, though, with this pick is where he's going. He was selected by the Los Angeles Chargers at 6. And something that's really interesting to me about that is the fact that the Chargers, they say they've already got their starting quarterback for next year in Tyrod Taylor. Now, did they just select Herbert to say, look, this is our guy of the absolute future? Once Taylor's contract runs out or we feel as though he's not doing the best job possible, do we just plug in Herbert and say, look, kid, it's on you now? Now, the thing is with the Chargers and that is they do have some pieces around him. They've got some pieces. Got a great running back in Austin Eckler. They decided to stick with Eckler instead of staying with Melvin Gordon this offseason. I think Keenan Allen is one of my favorite wide receivers in the NFL. He runs such a good route. He's very quick at the top of those routes, and he just really is a number one receiver in the NFL. So he does have some pieces around him, but the Chargers over the last couple of years have been, how do I put it? I would say poor is the best way to put it at putting the football in the end zone. Just last season, they ranked 21st in overall scoring. And nowadays, Phillip Rivers, the longtime Chargers quarterback, is now an Indianapolis Colt. Luckily, like I said, the Chargers do have a lot of talent around Herbert, and it will be interesting to see what they do with the situation between him and Tyrod Taylor, because it seemed as though this team announced him as the starter for next season during this past offseason. Now the selection at 7, the number 7 overall pick by, the Carolina Panthers, Derek Brown, defensive line, Auburn. Now, this is a pick that I am a very big fan of. I think he will be great in Matt Rule's team. He'll be a very big piece in that defense. And he really is I can't say cornerstone because he doesn't play edge, but he is an excellent run defender. He will really, I think, just be an extremely solid but disruptive defensive lineman, defensive tackle. He brings a lot of pressure and a lot of physicality to the interior of that defensive line, where one, it'll help open up lanes for edge rushers to get around, because the thing is, teams are maybe even going to have to start double teaming him, bringing a center and a guard just to take down Brown. And thing is, that'll open up lanes for linebackers, middle linebackers, if they're on a spy or on a blitz, to come in and fill up a gap. Or if he slots out to the outside and maybe a 4-3, that'll open up some room for a defensive edge rusher or a defensive lineman to get around the offensive line and make a play on the quarterback. Thing is it's not just those things. He's also great in run defense. He is a great finisher as a tackler. He might never be a true pass rusher, but he's very, very disruptive at the frontal point of attack. And that is what a lot of defenses in the NFL are looking for nowadays. They're looking for disruption and strong defensive play from the interior of the defensive line. It's no longer just about having 2 or 3 incredible edge rushers. It's about getting pressure from everywhere on the defensive line. For a team that just lost guys like Gerald McCoy, Dontari Poe, and even guys that are on the team now, like Kawann Short, he missed a lot of time last year coming off of rotator cuff surgery. This is a pick that is very good for that team, and he is one of the top players in this year's draft, or was. Now, one of my absolute favorite picks in this year's draft so far. At number 8, to the Arizona Cardinals. Like I said, one of my favorite picks this year, just because this is one of those guys where he fell to a team and that team identified him as best player available. We cannot miss out on this guy. Isaiah Simmons, the outside linebacker / literally every defensive position pretty much, from Clemson, ended up at 8 for the Arizona Cardinals. He's one of those guys that I really thought was going to go well before 8. I wanted him to go 4 to the Giants. I feel like he would have been a great piece to really shore up that defense and make sure that they can start getting at the quarterback or doing whatever they want Simmons to do, because he's even said it. He said it himself. He says, look, I don't play linebacker. I don't play slot safety. I don't play corner. I don't play free safety, strong safety. I just play defense. And that's exactly what he does. Last season with Clemson, he had over 100 snaps at 4 different defensive positions: at linebacker, edge rusher, slot corner, and safety. And the thing is, he excelled at every single position. And they showed highlights of it last night on the draft broadcast. The thing is, he dropped back into coverage, was excellent on a wide receiver in the slot. He rushes the quarterback. He broke through the offensive line. He's great at stopping the run. His recognition skills are off the charts. And even then, he is a physical beast. I think the Cardinals they have to be one of the winners of the draft, and not necessarily because this was a difficult pick for them to make, just because straight up he fell to them at 8. This was something that they likely were not expecting, and this is something that they have to look at and say, this is probably a blessing in disguise. From almost every mock draft I've seen, the Cardinals were either going wide receiver to help out Kyler Murray, or offensive line to, help out Kyler Murray, their young quarterback. But this is a position of not necessarily of need completely, but it is a position where this team can look at it and say, you know what? We don't necessarily need one, or we don't necessarily need one that badly, but this is a cannot miss player. This is a guy that we cannot let slip through our fingers. And another interesting pick at 9, to the Jacksonville Jaguars. And this is a team where everybody was looking at this and saying, look, the Jags either need an offensive lineman to help shore that up and help out their young quarterback, Gardner Minshew, or again, same kind of situation as the Cardinals, where they look at it and say, look, this team needs weapons. This team needs things to help out, needs things to work with their young quarterback. And again, this is where the Jags had to have looked at it and said, we're just going to go either, best player available / best player of need. And they just decided to go with arguably, I think the 2 top corners at the draft was easy to say, 1 and 2. Okudah 1. This guy's 2. CJ Henderson from Florida. He was awesome last year. He's a big guy. He's got, I'd say, average to above average length. He's so good in man-to-man coverage. Realistically, you cannot throw on this guy. He's very quick. He times the use of his speed very well, and that's one of the things that makes him such a dangerous corner. One, he looks fast because he is fast. And two, he uses that speed in exactly the right time, whether that's to come forward on the ball and make an aggressive play towards the ball, or if he gets beat, he's back on that man in a split second. He's very good at locating the ball and tipping that ball away. I'd say the only thing he really needs to work on is he needs to bulk up a little bit, maybe get a little bit bigger to work on some of those bigger receivers at the NFL level. But overall, I think he is a cannot miss prospect. He will be a great corner for the Jags for the time being, or for the foreseeable future, I should say. Excuse me. Let me just get a drink. I've got not water today, but some green tea. Always good to mix it up a little bit, but now moving on over to Cleveland. This is a team that has a lot of talent, and they decided to hopefully try and protect some of that talent and let some of that talent in their quarterback Baker Mayfield hopefully have some time and space to work with his receivers. So they went offensive tackle as well, as completely as expected. They went with Jedrick Wills Jr. from Alabama. He is another one of those top-ranked defensive linemen. I had him ranked second, in my kind of top 5, tier ranking of those offensive linemen. He should be very good for that team. Again, he's a plug-and-play guy. He has a nasty streak. He is very, very smart, though. The biggest thing I can say about him is he's a natural finisher. He's got the frame. He's got the anchor strength. And he's got the mind. He's got the football IQ that'll really solidify him at the offensive tackle position in the NFL. And the thing is, he's going to a team that realistically, they don't need an exceptional left tackle. They just need a left tackle that will be good enough to protect their quarterback long enough for him to deliver downfield, because this Cleveland Browns team has a ton of offensive weapons, between Jarvis Landry, Odell Beckham Jr., now Austin Hooper and David Njoku at the tight end positions. But thing is, over the last, year or two that Baker's been in the league, when has he really had a whole lot of time to deliver to those players? I think the smartest answer there is he hasn't. And Wills and their new offensive their right tackle, Jack Conklin, who came in from Tennessee during free agency. Those are two cornerstone tackles that realistically should give Baker Mayfield all the time in the world to make some of those throws. Moving on from Wills to the 11 pick and my New York Jets. Yes, I do support the Jets, even though they make me sad sometimes. They did not disappoint me this time. In a draft where I realistically would have been happy with any of the offensive linemen set to go at the start of this draft, or any of the top-end wide receivers, just because this is a team where the defense is solid. This defense, they're perennially in the top 10, top 5 in run defense. Yes, this team could use some work on the back end, but they've got young guys in Jamal Adams and Marcus May who are really ready to take that next step and become real contributors at the NFL level. That's mostly in reference to Marcus May, not as much for Jamal Adams, who's been one of the best safeties in the league. But this guy that they picked, boy, he is, man, he's a monster. He is just huge. Mekhi Becton from Louisville. And if you did not know, when I say that he is a monster, he is massive. The man is 6'7" and 365 pounds. And thing is, he's not, a big guy in terms of he's overweight. He's just got a big frame, natural anchor weight, anchor strength. He's got long arms. He's got that rare combination of size and athleticism, and in that speed. Keep in mind, he's a left tackle as well. He is 6'7". He ran a 5.140 at the draft. I think he is the best tackle that was available this year in the draft. But the thing is with him is he's one of those guys where it might not necessarily be boom or bust. However, it is where he's got I'd say a starting left tackle floor but at the same time, his ceiling is so high. If he can get it together and keep it together at the NFL level, I just think he'll be an absolute monster, and he's certainly going to help out in protecting Sam Darnold, especially, he's been hit a lot. I mean, Darnold was sacked 52 times, or not necessarily Darnold, but the team itself allowed 52 sacks last year alone. And that isn't to say that Darnold wasn't hit his fair share his rookie season. Becton should help create space for both Darnold and running back Le'Veon Bell, and hopefully give him some more time and space to work with in that backfield. Moving on, the 12th overall pick and the first selection ever to the Las Vegas Raiders. They went with Henry Ruggs III, taking the first wide receiver off the board. Now, if you were to ask me before the draft, and I still believe this, I think Ruggs is the third best available wide receiver in this year's draft. I have him behind his teammate Jerry Jeudy and Oklahoma's CeeDee Lamb. Ruggs is just a speedster. He's got good hands, he's got good route running, but the big standout attribute that he has, is his blistering speed. I mean, he's a smaller guy, only 5'11", less than 200 pounds. He had not a foot injury, but he hasn't had many injuries in college. Sorry about that. I was reading something else in here, but he's straight up just a vertical threat. I mean, he can outspeed realistically any corner in the game right now. He is incredibly fast. He has the tools to get the starting job as a rookie. It wouldn't surprise me any. The only issue that I have with this pick is the fact that there were, better receivers available. I understand this one was probably more going for fit than anything else, because I do think Ruggs will be a good fit in with John Gruden's offense. I'm just not sure that he'll be able to put everything together that he needs to really be a fully successful wide receiver at the NFL level. Moving on to 13, I'm going to try and maybe speed this up just a little bit. It's already half an hour in, and thank you guys all for tuning in. If you guys have anything for me, if you guys want me to talk about anything specific, throw it up in the chat. I am keeping an eye on it. And here's something else. Here's something interesting. So the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, even after making all their moves, all their trades this offseason, last night in the draft, they decided to take a look up at, they said, okay, we have the 14 overall pick. We want an offensive lineman. We want our guy. And the team that had the 13 pick was San Francisco, who had traded DeForest Buckner to Indianapolis for the pick. And pretty much, I think Tampa just traded a 4th round pick and the 14 for the 13 and the 7th round pick. I want to say that's right. And then with that pick, they selected Tristan Wirfs, one of the other offensive linemen in this draft from Iowa. This kid is a physical freak. He is an athlete at all levels, 6'5", 320 pounds, and does not move like it. He is not a finished product. He lets defenders get into his interior too much, let them get at his chest. But thing is, he's got good length, good athletic tools. His footwork could use some work. But the thing is, all the things that he's not very good at can be taught. His level of athleticism and just strength are things that cannot be taught. Luckily, they were able to get Wirfs for the Buccaneers. They are just really looking out to protect their new quarterback, Tom Brady. And with the 14 pick, flip-flopped, San Fran selected Javon Kinlaw from South Carolina, defensive lineman. So this is one of the reasons why I really think that the 49ers are one of the big winners of the first round of the draft. So they trade DeForest Buckner, an awesome defensive lineman, to Indianapolis for the 13 pick. Okay. Then they trade one down, move up 3 rounds with a later pick, and then draft one of the top defensive linemen in this draft. So essentially, they took a fairly young defensive lineman, got a younger defensive lineman who is, probably at that same caliber athletically, and then they just went up 3 rounds with one of their later picks. They really can't go wrong with that. But Kinlaw steps in at 6'5", 324 pounds. He is a beast of a man, especially at his position. He is very, very quick. His size and his length, make him a threat on the interior of that defensive line. And I think he'll essentially just slot right into where Buckner was playing last year. He has, the potential to be an elite interior pass rusher. He's got a great first step. He's got great contact, great hands, and he can really shed blocks very well. That's one of the most things that I was impressed by most from him when he played for South Carolina, was his ability to shed blocks and use his hands on interior offensive linemen to get past them. At 15, this is a player that I really did not expect to get to at 15, or not necessarily. I don't think he'd be available at 15, and obviously neither did Broncos general manager John Elway, because if you looked at him in the clip from his home, he was just smiling like crazy. He just had a grin on his face the entire time that they had that camera on him, because they arguably got the best wide receiver in this draft, Jerry Jeudy out of Alabama. He has it all. He can do everything. He has great route running, great speed, great hands, and can block. And this is just coming from what I saw out of him against Ole Miss, just because that was one of the big games that I saw. I mean, he did it all. He might not have had the best production that day, but he really, really focused on the other parts of his game that he does well. And he's just, to me, he was the number one wide receiver available in this draft, just because of the complete package that he is. He does everything and he puts it all out there. And to give a weapon like him to their young quarterback, Drew Lock, that had to have been the Broncos' plan going into day one of the draft. Moving on down to number 16 and the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons here went corner, which I'm not necessarily surprised that they went for a defensive back, especially after losing Desmond Trufant over the offseason. I want to say that was who? Yeah. Desmond Trufant, their number one corner, was a cap casualty realistically. And it does not surprise me that they went after a defensive back. It does interest me that they went after AJ Terrell, though. Terrell was not, really graded as a first round guy. And if he was going to go in the first round, it was going to be very, very early. It would have been late in the first round or early in the second. But he's got great size on him. He's a great cover corner. He's got a nice frame. He's effective. He's got a quick break on underneath routes. The only problem that I have with Terrell is his tackling ability and his ability on routes. He can, he's a little bit on the leaner side, so sometimes he can be muscled off by bigger wide receivers, and his tackling could use some work. But thing is, both of those things will come in time, or they can come in time. He can work on his frame, build that out a little bit, and he can work on his tackling. Both of those are coachable attributes. And as much as I hate to say this, one of the biggest winners in the draft, picked at number 17, the Dallas Cowboys selected CeeDee Lamb, in my opinion, and obviously the opinion of plenty of other analysts, the second best wide receiver available in the draft. CeeDee Lamb has it all. He's got the size, he's got the speed, he's got the hands. He does everything so well, and everybody saw that in his time at Oklahoma. Now, I just think that he does everything well, just as Jeudy, but I think Jeudy does things just a hair better. That's just what I think. But this team did not necessarily need a wide receiver, but they just added him to a deep, deep group of skill position players. CeeDee Lamb, I think, will have a ton of success in Dallas with Dak Prescott throwing him the ball, if he's even throwing him the ball after next season. Either way, a pairing of CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper will be very dangerous for the rest of the NFL, especially for the rest of the NFC East. Moving on to the 18th pick, here is Miami's second first-round draft selection. And here's where they decided to go with a little bit of protection for their new quarterback, selecting Austin Jackson from USC, coming in at 6'5", 322. I think is a very good, not necessarily polished, but still a good offensive lineman. The thing with him is that, if I'm not mistaken, he's very young. Let me see if I can find that about him. If I'm not mistaken, when I say young, I mean very young. Yeah, the kid's only 20 years old and getting drafted to the NFL by the Miami Dolphins. He's only 20. He's got a lot of time to develop. He's going to need some of that time to develop, but I do think that after Thomas and after the other 4 or 5 guys at the offensive tackle position that went before him, I do think that he is one of the better picks that they could have made there. Again, very good pick. He's very young, but has all the athletic ability in the world that could make him an all-pro tackle one day. Moving on to 19. Here is a pick that I do not like. I don't like it. This is one of the picks that makes the Raiders' earlier pick really kind of silly to me because they don't go with the best wide receiver and they don't go with the best player available. And then at 19 with their second first round selection, they certainly don't go with the best corner available. They selected Damon Arnette out of Ohio State. He was the second tier guy there. He's got good size and he's got good speed. He's got, good handle on the game, good handle on the ball, and he's physical, but he gets grabby when he's unsure. You'll see him a lot of the times if he doesn't necessarily know what route is going to be ran. You'll see him tugging on shirts and jerseys. And that's kind of showing of the inconsistency that he played with at Ohio State. And honestly, there were just better corners available, either better, athletically, better physically, or guys that are better mentally, guys that have a better grasp on the game. And I think just those two selections that the Raiders made, to me, make them the big loser of the draft so far. And now here's a team where I think that they've made 2 great picks, even though the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to be working with a young quarterback next season. They decided to kind of double down and say, look, let's not just, load up on offense. Let's load up on defense. Defense wins games and wins championships. And that's what they went with. With their second first-round pick, they went with K'Lavon Chaisson from LSU. The outside linebacker, great size, great speed, great physicality. Thing is, with him, what makes his speed and athleticism and physicality so great is his first step quickness and his acceleration to get towards the line of scrimmage and get towards the ball. He could improve some with his hands. His hand work there could use some work. But thing is, for a team that really could use the edge rush and the pressure from the linebacker position, I think he was a great selection for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, here's one that was interesting for a lot of people, myself included, going number 21 to the Eagles. And thing is, I knew the entire time, Eagles, they need all the help at wide receiver that they can get. What do? They draft a wide receiver, but it's not the one that a lot of people expected. They went with Jalen Reagor out of TCU. He's not necessarily the tallest, but he's got long arms. He's got great hands, very good reach, and very good release off the line of scrimmage. He's quick. He makes defenders miss. And the thing is, he does not usually go down on first contact. He's very good at breaking tackles. He keeps his legs moving, and he drives through corners and defenders trying to bring him down. I don't think he was the best available wide receiver overall, but I do think he will fit the scheme that they run in Philadelphia very, very well. Moving along to Minnesota Vikings. And with the 22 selection, this is the selection that they got in the Stephon Diggs trade to the Buffalo Bills. Excuse me. Just needed a quick drink there. In the trade from for Stephon Diggs, the Vikings essentially just say, okay, well, we lost a wide receiver. Okay. Shoot, let's get another one. Let's go with that. And they selected Justin Jefferson out of LSU. I think he was probably my fourth or fifth best wide receiver available in this year's draft, coming out of LSU, 6'1", 202 pounds. The thing with him, what is so nice to see, his hands. His hands are just soft. He's so good at catching the ball wherever it is around him. He's got great speed. He can catch the ball in stride exceptionally well. He can go up there and get it. And realistically, to me, his NFL comparison was Stephon Diggs. Those two play an extremely similar game, a similar style of football. And, to see Minnesota just lose that guy and then say, okay, we'll essentially just get a younger version of him really does not surprise me any at all. I think he is a great fit for Minnesota. And that's the thing. One of the big, talking points, of the night last night was, why didn't Philadelphia go with Justin Jefferson? Why'd they go with Reagor? Now, I think Reagor is a good prospect, and I think he'll be very good at the NFL level. That was a matter of fit. I think Reagor fit a lot better in Philadelphia than Jefferson does, and I think Jefferson fits in the system a lot better in Minnesota than someone like Reagor does. So I think those two landed themselves in very good situations for their skill sets. Now, the 23 overall pick went from New England to the San Diego Chargers, or not San Diego, gosh, I said it again. The Los Angeles Chargers. It's still hard, so hard to figure that out or to remember that. And this is where the Chargers went for a defensive player. Like I said earlier, they have a lot of talent on the offensive side of the ball. So they decided, okay, let's go for an inside linebacker. And they went with Kenneth Murray out of Oklahoma. I think he is a very, very solid pick for the Chargers. He'll really help to shore up that defense. And it's a defense that really could use some help. You know, they're losing Thomas Davis, who led the team in tackles last year. Denzel Perriman is on a contract year. And Murray should just be a plug-and-play linebacker. He's got all the physical attributes you need on an inside linebacker. He is great at stopping the run, great just in general with his stopping power. He's very good at his tackles. His strength is very high. And he has the acceleration and bursts to hit gaps and disrupt plays in the backfield. And I think that's really what they needed. New England, in that way, then traded out of the first round completely, did not trade in with another team after. Now at 24, I don't know if any of my Saints fans friends are still watching, but if you guys are, I'm here to say, calm down, chill, relax. I understand the Saints, looking at their depth chart, what do they need right now? They need a linebacker, but they did not go with a linebacker. Instead, they went with an interior offensive lineman. They went with Cesar Ruiz. And I have to say, why I'm saying calm down, relax, is because one, you always need more interior line depth, especially with an older quarterback and one that you want to stay healthy if you're going to go on another run. Now, here's my look at this. So you can either go with a linebacker or a defensive player or a wide receiver that isn't necessarily in the top of their class and the top of their position class, or you can go for the best interior lineman in this draft. If you ask me, I just think I don't see how you can go wrong with this pick because, like I said, he is the best interior lineman in this year's draft. He'll do great things, I think, in working with this offensive line and protecting Drew Brees next season. Coming in at the 25th pick, here's another trade here. San Francisco traded up from 31, I want to say. Yes, from 31 to go ahead and select wide receiver Brandon Ayuk from Arizona State. He is one of the longest wide receivers in this draft. He's only 6 foot, but he has a very similar wingspan to someone like Calvin Johnson. He's great man-to-man coverage. He's very quick. He's an above-average route runner. The thing is, he's even dangerous after the catch. He's got a handful of moves that he can make to really make defenders miss. And I think adding that type of talent on the offensive side of the ball after already adding one of the top defensive players so far in the draft, that made, to me, there are 2 or 3 really big winners in this draft. One of them is San Francisco. They just made 2 really, really big brain picks that I think will make them much better in the year to come. And here's a team that tried to big brain their pick, but instead I think made one of the biggest mistakes of the draft. So the Green Bay Packers traded up to 26 with Miami, traded up from 30 to 26, gave up some draft capital to Miami to move up and select Jordan Love, the quarterback from Utah State. Now, athletically, Jordan Love has it all. He's 6'4", 225, great runner, strong arm, very mobile, but his decision-making just is not good. And the thing is, for a team that already has arguably one of the best quarterbacks in the draft, I just don't understand why you would look at that situation and say, you know what we need in the first round? Another quarterback. Let's bring in a guy who last year had almost as many interceptions as he had touchdowns. Am I crazy for thinking that just is not a good idea? And thing is, if he reaches his upside, if he reaches what he can be with that physicality that he has, he'll be a great quarterback in the NFL. But the problem with it is they already have a quarterback, and this is a team that should be in win now mode. Aaron Rodgers is already 36 years old. There are going to be other quarterbacks later in this draft that probably have very similar physical traits. Jacob Eason from Washington, but thing is, you already have a good quarterback that you need to put more weapons around. Look, Aaron Rodgers can't just hand it off every down to Aaron Jones. He can't just throw it to Devontae Adams every down. That just doesn't work. They needed to put weapons around him or find better ways to protect him or even shore up that defense a little bit. Literally, I think quarterback was the only position that the Packers should not have gone. The only position that they did not need to go with, they decided to pick with. And it's not even as though they just decided, okay, we'll take a quarterback at 30, and go from there. No, they traded up. They lost draft capital to Miami, who already has the most draft capital in this draft of any team, to go with Jordan Love. I don't get it. I just don't understand. Moving on to the 27th pick. This is another interesting pick, but I do think it's a good pick. The Seattle Seahawks went with Jordan Brooks, outside linebacker from Texas Tech. He wasn't necessarily given a day one grade, but I think if you watch his tape and his talent, I think he's certainly good enough to be a day one guy. He's versatile. He can line up on the line or outside or even inside and in the linebacker core. He's very good at run defense. He's got good closing speed, and he has the burst to shoot gaps. I mean, just last year, he had 20 tackles for loss. He's great at tackling. He's very, very strong. And I think, for a team like the Seahawks that really could use defensive help, I think Brooks is going to be great for them. Moving on, this is honestly, again, one of my favorite picks. Inside linebacker from LSU, the first ever pick from LSU going to the Baltimore Ravens, linebacker Patrick Queen, 6'2", 230. He is a big man. They say undersized. I don't think so. I think he's just perfectly sized for what he does and what he needs to do. Thing is, he's a 3-down linebacker. He's good at pass rush, good in pass coverage. He can, stop the run. He can do it all, and that's what I think is so good. He's versatile, and you can realistically play him almost anywhere in that front seven, and he sets the tempo. He's a leader on the defensive side of the ball, and realistically, he gets it done doing anything that you need him to do. Moving on, the only pick of the Tennessee Titans. The Titans decided to go offensive line, which this one was a little bit surprising to me. Well, maybe not. So they needed a new right tackle after losing Jack Conklin to free agency. So they decided to go with Isaiah Wilson from Georgia. He's another really big man. He is a mountain. He's 6'7" and 350. The only real difference I'd say between him and Mekhi Becton, Wilson just isn't as polished when it comes to what he does on the field. But thing is, Wilson is still a massive man. He's got great length, big hands, and he's really tough to beat around that corner. Thing is, he's a pure right tackle, and I don't think that he'll really be able to make that shift to left tackle if they need him to. Luckily, I don't think they will. I feel like Taylor Lewan will end up staying in Tennessee for the majority of his career. I don't think Wilson has reached his potential yet. He does need to work on his footwork and his placement with his hands. But the thing is, those are all coachable things. I expect Wilson to be very good for the Titans for the years to come. And now here comes Miami back with their third selection of the draft. They traded down from 26 to 30, and they end up getting one of the most athletic corners in the draft in Noah. I think I remember how to say it. They said it a lot in the draft last night. In Noah Igbinoghene. I think it's Igbinoghene from Auburn. He's undersized a little bit, only 5'10", less than 200 pounds. But thing is, he's fast. The man is a pure athlete. He's great in press man coverage. He reroutes wide receivers where he wants them to go. He's better in man coverage than in zone. And even though he's a former receiver, he has not had any interceptions. But thing is, he's a very good tackler and an aggressive run defender whenever teams decide to take it to the outside. The Dolphins already have two really good corners in Xavier Howard and Byron Jones. So you have to think, why would they go for a position of strength here? I mean, I think this might have been them just looking at this player and saying, look, this is a guy that we identify. We like him a lot. We think he'll fit in with this team, long term. And that's why they decided to go with Igbinoghene. I think he'll be great in Miami, though. I think he'll really slot in well in that kind of third spot. 31, back from, I think, 25. Yes, 25. San Francisco traded down, so this is a Minnesota pick. They went with corner as well, Jeff Gladney from TCU. He's about the same size as Igbinoghene. I don't think he's as fast, but he's got better length. He's better he's good man-to-man coverage. Bigger receivers do give him trouble from time to time, but I do think he will put on some size, and he already plays bigger than what his frame. He plays out of his frame. He's a tough guy. He does a really good job of reading the quarterback and playing the ball in zone coverage, which I think is a big step up from a lot of other corners that you get out of the draft, especially later on in the first and going on through the second rounds or the later rounds. He's got great timing and breaking up passes. He's opportunistic, but he's not a natural, playmaker on the ball. And last, but most certainly not least, this is arguably one of my favorite picks in the draft. With the 32nd pick overall, the Kansas City Chiefs decide to go with a running back, the first running back of the draft from LSU, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, which he might not be the highest rated running back in this year's draft, but I have to say, for the fit, I think he is awesome. He's built low to the ground. He's thick. He's got a lot of power behind him. He just does not go down at first contact. It's very tough to bring him down. He's only 5'7", but he comes in at 207 pounds of pretty much just pure muscle. He always keeps his legs moving. He's a great pass catcher, and that's the thing that I like about him going to Kansas City. Kansas City already have Damian Williams, but Damian Williams is not consistent at catching the ball out of the backfield, whereas you have almost the exact opposite in Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Edwards-Helaire is great at catching out of the backfield. He's very quick. He's got nice hands. And he's very, very good at running routes. And that's something that I think will be very, very nice to see in Andy Reid's offensive scheme. There is some room for improvement pretty much across the board for this player, but with all the running backs this year, I think that's the case. So overall, I'd say the big winners of this draft got to be Miami. Miami, I think, is a huge winner. Even though they had to trade up, Tampa, I think, is a big winner this year. They got offensive line help to protect Tom Brady. I think Miami crushed it. Miami out of the park. Awesome. And the other one of the other two big winners for me, as I said earlier, Arizona, just for having Simmons fall into their lap. Jacksonville for picking two of the best players available, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And the Cowboys, even though I think they could have gone with a different position just for better fit, CeeDee Lamb, will, certainly just be a great wide receiver for this team. My biggest losers, really, I've only got two, because for the most part, I think teams did very well this draft. My only two losers are the Las Vegas Raiders and the Green Bay Packers. That is all I have for you guys today, and right in the nick of time, about a minute until rounds 2 and 3 start of the NFL draft this evening. I'm just gonna have to go and enjoy that as well. I hope everybody enjoyed. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope everybody is out there staying safe and staying healthy, staying inside, and now there's something to stay inside for. Got to go watch the draft. So with that in mind, I will be back on Monday. I'll put out a poll over the weekend. I'm still debating whether Monday's show should be more about the NFL draft and the later rounds that happen over the weekend, and maybe taking a different kind of approach at it and looking at what individual teams did, and just kind of going over winners and losers, or going back to baseball. So, with all that said, thank you all for tuning in. This has been Just G Live with George Ruggiero. See you guys on Monday.